Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. I am joined by my friend and colleague, Tony Ponturo. We have been enjoying doing these programs for a while now. We're having some amazing guests. We have an amazing guest later in a few minutes. And we're just excited for all of the people who are listening or watching or on YouTube or on every other platform, I think imaginable, but most of the big ones, if nothing else. So we hope you'll watch. We find that we're learning as much as we might be teaching. So any feedback is welcome, politely, but good or bad. We do want to hear from you, and we hope you enjoy it. And so with that, I will say hello, Tony. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ray. Everything's, it's sort of a busy world, a lot going on, a lot to absorb, a lot to assess, but I think that's good we're doing the podcast so we can get people on to talk out things. And, our goal is mainly to help instruct younger people, but I think, at any age, we have a younger mind that wants to keep learning and growing, and so it's that continual learning. So whether it's young in age or young in mind, it's all good to keep absorbing new information.
And young at heart. Young at heart.
Always that.
Yeah. Good. So our topic we'll talk about a little bit right now. I'll mention our guest. Her name is Marti Fischer. She is a executive coach and leadership development expert and author. She wrote a book called Making Your Internship Work, which kind of shows that she really covers the whole spectrum of coaching. For the young folks listening, she knows how to get people going. And for those of you who may be looking to make the next step, what are the questions? What are some of the things that help, your management see in you the things that they want to see in another manager and potential career development? So really excited to have Marti. And we thought Tony and I would kick around a little bit the whole idea of what's going on in the workplace as it relates to the environment and the culture, which is so different than the, dashing Dan commuter and dashing Donna commuter to get your coffee, get to the office, go to meetings all day, go home, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just really different. So Tony, your thoughts on what it would be like and what kind of, you've been working with students at Columbia and NYU. What are you seeing that's in your mind different, maybe better, maybe worse, maybe the same? Like, give us a little taste of what your experience was like there.
Yeah, I think younger people today are probably a lot more independent of thought and independent of action than we were. We were dedicated to move up the ladder, be successful. I never had a timetable or an end spot, but I knew it was all about, doing good and processing as high as you could go. I think today's young person is, more of the work and life and that balance, and will make decisions based on that. And of course, maybe the pandemic was a terrible thing, but usually you try to find some silver lining from something. And in a way, it taught people with technology. I mean, I'm in Hilton Head, you're in Florida or New York, one of the two places, but we can do this podcast, right? And so we're learning to be more mobile, and people take jobs. I have a friend down here who still works for Madison Square Garden, but it's all remote, and so he can live in Hilton Head. He doesn't, have to. Have to live in New York City. I love living in New York City, but so it's a different world, and I guess those of us who grew up differently have to sort of learn to adjust and understand it and appreciate it. And I think our buzzword recently has been listen to that next generation coming up.
Yeah. I like to say that I'm in an undisclosed location just to make it
Well, there you go.
mysterious.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm identifying myself. Although it did give me a free breakfast the other day because the person said, I didn't know you were in Hilton Head. Let me buy you breakfast. I was like, okay, that's good.
Oh, there you go. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think what we've done on previous shows is ask folks, what would you do or what would you tell your 22-year-old self? And more than one of them has said to enjoy the ride, relax a little bit, and have more fun. And I think what we've said on each one of those is that seems to be what the current generation of folks coming up through the business side of things are more focused on than we were. And I find it really fascinating to figure out, okay, should you be thinking about that when you're 22, 3, 4, or is that something you should be looking back on when you're 50 or 60 and say, I should have had more fun? Like, I don't know what happens if everybody in the workplace just is more as focused on having fun and relaxing and enjoying the ride. We weren't necessarily having to enjoy the ride. We weren't always having fun. So it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of that is.
Well, I used to use this in the classroom is the first $1 billion of investors for Uber got all wasted because they had too much fun. Those they entrusted. It's like, okay, let's start all over again with a new $1 billion and see if we can get this right. But I think what is important is that every young person today needs to realize that it's not a sprint. It's a slow, sort of plodding race. Plodding not in a negative way, but think things through. Mm-hmm. Everything's a foundation of experience. I just think it's important to, like a paper route that I had at 13, mowing lawns. It's all somehow establishing who you are. It's discipline and responsibility. Do you do what you say you're going to do? So everything's experience that works for as you go. And we both learned that, your career may take 3, 4, 5 different twists and turns because we all somehow don't know how to let go of the steering wheel, which again, our parents were, but there's a lot of research, and anyone who's 25 listening to this is probably going to tune out on this comment, but there's a lot of research that says that people who did retire at 65 or even 60 sort of regret that they did it because you sort of want to have a voice somewhere. And it's not always the money. It's about the, responsibility, accountability, interaction with people. And so, it's a long, good haul.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't like to say the word retired. I say that in my new life, because I think that's exactly to your point. Thought I wanted to, but didn't. And so we're building a new life, doing a podcast, doing some other things. And I think that it's good to not have a finish line. And I think that might be something that the younger generation has more of a sense of, like, I'm not even thinking about that, which I didn't either. So good. And then I think it's the journey and the patience, to your point about nothing is, instant, add water and serve. I want to be the VP of something before I'm 30, good luck. The more you focus on it, the less likely you might be to get there. And that's just to let go of the steering wheel, which sounded a little dangerous, but I knew what you meant by it. So yeah, I think challenging times for sure. I mean, the younger gen have a lot more competition, a lot more focus. I can't wait. And what I love about our guest, Marti, she's going to tell us, I don't know what you guys are smoking, but you're wrong. And so I'm excited. And I think what I will do now is go to the introduction
Sounds
and let
good.
everybody know that we'd like to bring Marti Fischer on and hear all about her expertise dealing with career horizons from start to finish, etc. Welcome, Marti. So
Hello.
Nice to have you today. We are
Nice
really
to be
excited.
here.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. We're part of the mission of the show is to help anyone who wants to talk about careers, listen about careers, and not necessarily to their parents, their boss, or their neighbor. And so this is like we like to think of as a very safe space for conversations about things. So it's great to have you, and excited to hear your thoughts. I thought we would start first because you have a really interesting career, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that journey. So I would like to listen, is what I should say. So give us a clue.
Yeah, the long and winding road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, to your point about career, I mean, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, to create a space for people who have questions. People who don't want to who want to do different kinds of exploration in their career, their leadership, their communications with their teams. An item communication that's becoming more and more important as we go along here, especially in divisive times. But a whole nother part of the conversation, which we'll get to. Okay, so here's my story. I started off in the museum world.
Wow.
I know, go figure, right? And I loved it. Don't tell my husband, who at one point was my boss, that was my favorite job I ever had. But I worked for the Museum of Modern Art, and it was fantastic. Unfortunately, for anyone who lives in Manhattan, you probably know that that's not horrendously sustainable if you also want to eat. And so I needed to find another line of work. I've always been quite good with negotiating, and so fell into this media buying thing at Wells Rich Green, the now long departed Wells Rich Green, and learned how to be a television negotiator. I mean, I will just say that for the first couple of years that I was there, my mother thought I sold televisions in New York. I mean, she just couldn't seem to get her head around what that was. Yeah. But then from there, I went to another agency, McCann Erickson, ran a group at McCann for television buying. And then I went to the sales side. Now, doesn't seem like a big deal now, but I was actually the first person to breach that, what had been a divide, church and state between agency and sales. And I will say, for anyone who's looking for a job, that took me a year to get that job. So anyone who's complaining about how long it's taking them to get a job, you need some serious staying power, if you really want to make a sea change like that. And I was at Arts and Entertainment Network, A&E, for a long time, almost 10 years, and I did a lot there. I had a great group of people there, and also negotiated the first job share in the advertising business. So, I mean, didn't even realize it, but just kind of paving the way that way.
Yeah.
And when I left that work, I decided that I wanted to do something completely different. And here it is. I mean, here's the crux of everything we're going to talk about today. The question that I faced myself with is, like, what do I even know? And what do I do? And who cares? I mean, really, who cares? And so I ended up at the end of a very long day of thinking, which wasn't actually one day, it was a long time of thinking. I kind of came up with, the things that I'm really good at are negotiating, relating to people, helping communications, building relationships. Really good at that. And those are very needed things in the workplace. And so I started consulting, specifically in the beginning with nonprofits, because they have the least access to professional coaching, to professional guidance. They just don't have the resources for that. Right. But as I started doing more and more of that, and more involved with boards of directors, it became apparent that they were also coming to me for leadership guidance, career guidance, and working with their teams. And I thought, why not try to monetize that? So since 2006, right? It's a lot of years. It's almost 24 years. So here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. So I'm interested about your book, which is titled Make Your Internship Count.
Yes, here it is. Shameless Commerce Division.
Oh,
this is Lord. What it looks like in the
Who
flesh.
Who would have guessed? You can see it on
Who would have guessed? I actually have one.
Tony's got one too. I guess I need to write a book. I have to think of the title first. I think I might title it Boiling Cauldron, and just let all my anger out and just put it in a bookstore.
And then, like everybody told you to do, write that draft and then hit delete.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting because I know that a big part of your work is with executives and, leadership. And you've written a book about internships. Now, so A, why did you go to the early part of someone's career? And B, does it help the people you're working with in executive, leadership and all that? So talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah. So here's why I wrote the book. Because, leaders have a lot of options. As you both know, you've both been leaders. The higher up you go in leadership, the more access you have. Also, the lonelier it gets. That's why people like me have jobs, right? You have leadership jobs and advisors because you need to work on your bench strength. But the reality is there are leaders everywhere along the entire chain. And the point for me for writing this book was to try to democratize the work process a little bit more. Create a level playing field where all young people or people who are making a transition to a fully new line of work and need some guidance have the access to the same tools so they can show up the same way, they can create value the same way, and they can learn a lot, and they can also create value for their employers. So that was the purpose of this book from the intern side. From the employer side, I wrote this book, and these were really my two primary audiences. Is from the employer side, there are a lot of repetitive themes with first-time workers, with interns, with people who are new to the working world that I hear over and over and over again with senior leaders. So the book was an attempt from the employer side to try to address some of those things around expectations, around communication, around feedback, around positioning, around value, around reading the room, around nonverbal communication, around how to leverage leadership skills. Right? And so it really does serve two purposes and it's a resource for both to go back to and to reference because of the way it's laid out into three sections, which is sort of a before, a doing, a during, and then a leveraging what comes next.
Cool. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So it does cover the full spectrum. Yeah. Nice.
That was the intent.
Good.
So, Marty, I sort of have a two-pronged question. You were sort of getting to the second part of the prong. The first one is, I did a very small piece of executive coaching about 5 years ago. And one of the things I found challenging was that it somehow, to people, it's like, oh, there must be something wrong with me that I need help. It's almost like a peer thing. Now, maybe this was people in sports and media versus the arts world and stuff like that. But it's so important to get coaching if you can develop yourself better. But I'd be curious to see if you ran into that. And if you did, how do you convince people that this isn't a form of weakness, it's actually a form of strength, that you know how to make yourself better? And then the second part of the prong is there one or two things that as you go and talk to the what I'll call the leadership level of people that you find almost obvious is missing that you help fix?
Okay, so
if that makes sense.
Part one, yeah, makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So let me tell you a little bit about how my model and how it works. A lot of executive coaches are hired by companies to specifically work toward an improvement in a leader, or they might see some potential in a leader and they bring in a coach to help that person realize that leadership. That's the typical model. My issue with that model is that your accountability as a coach is really to the corporation, not the person. So there's a filter. And I think that's where, to Tony's earlier point, you can find a little bit of pushback of, well, I don't really know I need this. Why do they want this for me? I don't get it. Somebody's kind of over my shoulder. That's not my model. My model is that I have individuals come to me and we work separately from their institution. Now, having said that, I've worked with a lot of finance people, a lot of lawyers, a lot of people that are just leaders of fintechs, leaders of startups. It's really the whole spectrum. I would say the one exception is really the sciences and healthcare, because they operate independently. It's a little bit of a standalone vertical. And so I don't have a lot of bench strength there. But my client base, and I'll speak to my client base, they come to me because they really see themselves at a point where they see the next move. It may be within their current institution, or it may be somewhere else. They want to make a career pivot. They just don't know the pathing on how to get there. That's where I really help them to kind of create the narrative, create the path, figure out what the exploration looks like. We do a lot of test and learn, a lot of networking in there to try to figure out what the potential pathways are, for that.
So I'll pick up on Tony's question. Are you finding that the current people you're working with or around are pivoting? Like, we would get into the media business and spend 30 years there, or you get to watch when you retired, or it was like your goal to, stay in the media business or whatever. But I think that at this point, are you finding people just much more free and easy to say, you know what, I don't really like this. So I think I'm going to try and do something different. And at
They
what
are.
age
And you know what? It might be after 30 years, right? It might be after 10 also. It might be after 10. And I didn't see that 15 years ago. 15 years ago, it was really more okay, I've done my 25, 30 years in this place. I liked it. I feel like I've left nothing on the table, kind of ready to move on, but I'm not ready to retire, to your earlier point.
Right.
So what does that next thing look like? Where are the assets that I can leverage?
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm really seeing that it's like younger people will give, 5-6 years into a sector, and it's like, not really resonating with me. It's time to go. It's time to move on. And that's fine, because there are some core tenets. There are obviously the technical skills that you'd need to learn to move into a new area. That's sort of the table stakes for the new area. But the things that are the standards, the things that are the through threads, the connective pieces that move with you anywhere, are curiosity, teachability, adaptability, problem solving, collaboration, leadership, humility. Those are the things that if you can build a narrative and a position around those things, that's what attracts other people to you as a potential employee or leader.
Right. So
Marty,
that's what goes in your toolkit. No, just like that's I'm just summing up. Like, that's what goes in your toolkit, your career toolkit.
Right. But a lot of times, people, and I heard you said this before, a lot of people call those soft skills and they discount them. I would push back on that and say those are the most essential skills. I mean, look, you were both in media, right? It is a relationship business. It's a beautifully unregulated space. So, so we're all in this, and it's all about trust and building relationships. And, in the media sector, that's just a given. That's what's going to form your reputation. That's going to move with you from one role to another.
Yeah, it's like we talked about it in some of our podcasts. It's like, if everyone's smart, right? If there's an equal playing field of smarts, then the tiebreaker is going to be: do I want to spend time with Marty and Ray, or do I not want to spend time with Marty and Ray? And they're going to be good team players and be cooperative, and can I trust them, and the whole bit. And so that soft skill, which I agree with you, is to me really the hard skill, because it's sort of a difference maker is so important.
Part 2 of this podcast will be available next week. For more information, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com. Thank you.